Hey guys, what's going on? It's Gale here, back again on the 5-9 channel to talk about Konosuba Fantastic Days and obviously the controversies around its launch, you could say, I guess. That's the best way to put it, about who's publishing the game. Today with me, we have our resident Gacha expert, Nolar. Say hello.
What's going on, guys?
And of course, for those of you who may not know about Konosuba, it's a popular isekai anime that has been uh, quite popularized by the fact that it's a parody of all isekais and kind of a comedy more than the serious isekais that like ReZero is and Overlord and so on and so forth. Of course, this game launched in March 2019, or I would say late Feb 2019 more so. Of course, just before COVID started. And the basic idea of it is that it's an RPG game with autoplay, time gauge based elements, being able to control the character when their gauge is full, and choose what they do: normal skills, ultimate skills, and some other skills as well. Also, sorry, it was February 2020. I don't know why I said 2019. And it was only available in Japan at the time and was locked behind a VPN as well. So if you were based in North America, Europe, or any other nation, it would be quite difficult for you to access it without a VPN. It was a very story driven game and has a strong retelling of the story with cutscenes from the anime as well, and some voice acting as well present within the game. There are also events introduced to the game that are unique to the game itself and give a new story featuring other characters and also some stories that aren't even present in the anime or the light novel. Now, as I mentioned at the start of the video, this game is now announced to be released globally in early 2021. But there is a slight issue with who is publishing the game, and that is Nexon. So, Nolar, give us an idea on who Nexon is and why they will be potentially bad for Konosuba.
All right, so let's give you a brief history of what Nexon and their company comprises of. So, Nexon is a very, they think they're based in Korea, but they, of course, they have a global arm and Japanese arm. And they became very famous, I think, in the mid 90s with the MMORPGs. I think most of you will know of Maplestory. So, Maplestory, Dungeon Fighter, Cartwriter, like these are some of the MMOs that kind of brought them into just the publishing world in general in games. Now, when we're talking about gachas, is probably like early 2010s. So they made Maplestory M, which is, of course, the mobile version of Maplestory. And they've known to be pretty mediocre with titles, like even with Alice. So if you guys don't know the history of Alice, I used to play that quite a bit. It was a big game. It came out in JP, I want to say like 2016, 2017, around that time. And the biggest thing about it was they announced they were going to release it in global, and Nexon was going to be the publisher. Unfortunately, I think it was 3 days before launching the game, official launch of the global version, they took down the game, and then they said bad translations. It needed more work, which is an excuse, because when you're talking about localization, that takes a long time, right? It takes a while. So if you're not done localizing it by 3 days before launch, there's a bunch. If that was actually true, that's very bad, but it's probably not. And it was just a disguise to talk about other things going on behind the scenes. And Nexon in the past, at that moment, they had the issue of shutting down the global arm. So, yeah, the publisher for the global side wasn't going to be around. They've had issues with people being fired, going off rogue, stuff like that. It's just not a good look. And look, when we're talking about just the games, they've had a bunch of different games, but of course in 2020, a ton of those have been shut down. One of them most promisingly is Overhit. So this is the problem with Overhit. Overhit was a beautiful, fantastic game. Looked really great with the Unreal Engine. And in Korea, it was very popular. But when it decided to come to global, I mean, I was all hyped for it. I went pretty hard, pretty early. But then I realized that the global version of Overhit has changed quite a bit compared to the Korean version. And the biggest examples are decreased rates. I think it went from 5% to 3%. They changed some rarities of units. They pay gated or paywalled, I guess, some units too. Their pity system was different on global versus JP Korea. So and at the same time, they were trying to catch up to the Korean JP versions by going at breakneck speeds. So very quickly in the Gacha community, Overhit, people dropped it. And everyone gave it a shot because it looked really good. And that's the thing with Nexon games. They always look very good. They play pretty well. But the publishing side of Nexon, with their practices of over monetization, and changing rates, changing rarities, all this stuff coming from JP, Korea, their Asian servers, and bringing them over to global, people just have a bad taste in their mouth with Nexon. So much so that in the Gacha community, it's a meme. Like, you don't touch a game that's Nexon unless you just plan to play it completely free to play. Because the other thing about Nexon is they generally shut down their games very quick, anywhere from 6 months to a year. So a lot of people have a bad connotation of what Nexon can bring, and that's unfortunate because as of right now, Konosuba is being published by Nexon. It's a very popular title, Konosuba. I know a lot of people, a lot of my friends and other Gacha people in the community were like, "Hey, you should play this." I am adverse to VPNs because it's just extra steps, more work for me to do, and I just usually would like to wait. But it's, Konosuba has been touted as probably the most popular thing for a while at JP, and the fact that Nexon's going to handle it, it's not a good idea. So, with that all said, Gail, what do you think could happen for the game?
Okay, so there's a couple of scenarios that are in mind personally. One of those scenarios is, of course, the worst case scenario where it's the exact same thing that happened to Overhead, where they go at a massively increased pace, try and catch up to the JP as soon as they can, change rarities and decrease the rates and so on and so forth. It's probably the worst case scenario. I think that much we can agree on, right?
Mm-hmm.
A safer scenario, which I think is also possible depending on how much the developer has control over the situation, which I don't see it, because I think the Konosuba developer Suzumap or some, I'm unsure on how to pronounce the developer's name, but it's something along those lines. They are obviously not a very popular developer like Cygames is. I mean, if you look at Cygames right now and how they're handling Princess Connect, Crunchyroll is publishing the game, and Crunchyroll's games aren't necessarily known for being advertised so much, but if you see how they're handling it right now, they're plastering it all over the anime awards. Just generally, you can see it consistently. I think daily they make an ad about it, which is great to see. That shows that Cygames has kind of tried to force their hand and be like, what, promote this game, please, for the love of God, kind of thing.
Mm-hmm.
So that's another case where Nexon is just publishing it and promoting it, and that's it. They don't control like the development or the pace of the game whatsoever, and it's all in the hands of the developer. But again, I don't know. I feel like those are the two scenarios. I mean, they could also pull off a Sino Alice where they decide to listen to the community, because one of the things that was noticed immediately, when it got tweeted out, I personally didn't notice it, right? I looked at the screen and I was like, ooh, global launch, perfect, that's good. And then in small writings, I saw published by Nexon, and I was like, oh.
Yeah.
I can see now why people in the Twitter comments were so mad. And since people were so mad, there may be a chance that they might, do the same thing that Sino Alice did, basically. But again, contracts have been signed. On top of that, of course, at the end of the day, like I said, Xeno Alice is a Square Enix game, right? It's not necessarily the same level of what Konosuba's developer has control over,
Yep.
The situation. So it's a lot harder. I don't know. It's going to be very interesting to see how it goes, but I'm hoping for the middle case scenario where it's just like Nexon doesn't do anything except promote the game and localize the game, and that's it. That's all they need to do.
Yeah. For those who don't know, there's two sides to to releasing a game. There's the development side, right? And usually the developers are themselves gamers because they would make something that they would enjoy, right? And then there's the second side of things, which is the publishing side, and that's usually the business suits and accountants crunching the math. So the developers are the ones that make the gameplay experience for you. Quality of life updates, like all that kind of stuff is really in their realm. The publishing side is more, at least for the mobile side of games, it's all about the monetization. So while I agree the best case scenario would be Nexon is the publisher but doesn't dictate the release schedule for on the developing side, they're still in control of the purse strings in terms of monetization. And that's where I get a little wary where, yeah, those guys don't know how to monetize their game properly. Like, I understand y'all want to make money, and of course you do, but there's good ways and bad ways to do about it, and most of the time, it's going to be the bad ways with Nexon. So, again, the best case scenario is what Alice did. Now, it wasn't just the Twitter people having the outrage that had Nexon drop Alice and then revert it back to Pokélabo and Square Enix. It was a combination of the global arm of Nexon was going to go under, and then the contract talks probably with Square Enix and Pokélabo with Alice didn't square off. Like, you didn't finish the localization, you didn't do all this other stuff. So it was a combination of things. But I will say the Twitter outrage probably played a part because Alice is a huge game. Especially in Japan, it's very well received. It's a very different type of game, but nonetheless, like, that does play a part in it. So here, the downside, like you mentioned, the developer isn't very big, right? So they don't have the leverage to push their weight around against Nexon per se. So look, I hate to spell doom and gloom, but if the best case scenario is Nexon stays as a publisher, it's cool. So the gameplay experience won't be like hindered any case or whatever. But they might just be an issue of monetization or rarity changes or whatever. That still might occur. And the worst part is like you said, Nexon gets their greedy hands into everything, dictates release schedules, speed up the pace or whatnot, and it all goes to hell. And bye game 6 months later. So yeah, I am not happy about Nexon because the game looks pretty cool. The modeling of the game is interesting because it's like miniaturized, but not like chibi models because they don't have the big heads, but they're not like full size 3D models either. They're like shrunk. That's the best way to put it. Yeah. But either way, I'm excited to at least check out the game. Again, if it is going to be developed by or published by Nexon, my best advice is the games are great. It's just stay free to play.
Yeah, that's I think the best advice anybody could literally give for Nexon games. Pretty much just avoid spending anything, and if say they don't do anything, potentially I'd say give it a couple of months. I think that's the best way to put it, is like give it a couple of months, stay free to play, don't touch the monetary part of the game. And if say for example they decide to improve, who knows, I'm not holding my breath on that. But if they do improve, we'll put our hands up and say fair enough, Nexon's actually pulled off a worldie here, basically, you could say, and actually not messed up a game for once.
Yeah,
but that's gonna be a bit of a stretch. Any final thoughts before we wrap up?
No, just early 2021, so I imagine a March April launch. Sounds about right. It could be a little earlier, but usually when unless it's already been announced by now, we're basically Christmas Eve here, then we won't. It'll probably be March or in April, which cool. A lot of gachas come out around that time, so I'll be on the lookout. You definitely check out 5.9. We'll be covering it, hopefully with good things to say.
Yeah, I agree with Nalora there. I think it'll be an early 2021 launch as well sometime. I'm leaning towards the same day as the anniversary of the JP version. I'm gonna make that bold assumption.
Okay.
It's a late February, early March, give or take. That's my assumption, but it could also be March to April. Global versions, like last year we had SDS Grand Cross release on March 3rd. So March does seem to be a tentative time of gacha games releasing then. But yeah, that's all from us today. Thank you so much for watching. Leave a like and subscribe for more content. As Nolar said, we will hopefully cover this game with good things to say about it, of course. Our socials will be in the description down below. 5.9 socials will be in the link tree down below, so you can get access to our Twitch, YouTube. Well, no, you are on our YouTube. Sorry, our Reddit, Facebook, and all that jazz. Once again, thank you all for watching. We'll see you guys next time.